John drove down the desolate highway. A dense fog rolled in, shrouding the road in an eerie silence. His headlights cut through the thick air, illuminating only a few feet ahead. Suddenly, a figure appeared through the fog, a young woman in a white dress. She stood on the side of the road, her thumb extended hopefully. John hesitated but slowed the car to a stop. As she got in, a cold draft swept through the vehicle. She gave him directions to a nearby town. When he looked to the side, his breath caught in his throat. The passenger seat was empty. The young woman had vanished. John slammed on the brakes, his heart pounding. The fog was so thick it felt like driving through a cloud. He could barely see a few feet ahead. He scanned the roadside frantically. No sign of her. The mysterious figure he had seen just moments ago had vanished into the mist. Determined to find some explanation, John drove into the nearby town. The streets were eerily quiet, the dim lights casting long shadows that danced in the fog. He stopped at a brightly lit diner, hoping to find answers. The neon sign flickered, casting a ghostly glow on the wet pavement. Inside, the warmth and chatter provided a welcome contrast to the eerie fog outside. The clinking of cutlery and the hum of conversation felt almost surreal. He took a seat at the counter and ordered a cup of coffee. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, momentarily calming his nerves. The waitress noticed the troubled look on his face. Her eyes, filled with concern, met his. "Rough night?" she asked, pouring him a cup of steaming coffee. John recounted his experience, his voice trembling slightly. The vanishing hitchhiker, the empty seat, the chilling feeling. Every detail seemed to haunt him. The waitress's smile faded. She listened intently, her expression growing more serious with each word. When he finished, a heavy silence fell between them. The diner's usual noise seemed to fade into the background. "You've seen her too, haven't you?" John asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The waitress nodded slowly. "She's just a legend around here," she said. "The vanishing hitchhiker. But legends often have a grain of truth, don't they?" John stared into his coffee, pondering her words. The fog outside seemed to press against the windows, as if trying to get in. He couldn't shake the feeling that this night was far from over. The whispers in the dark were just beginning. John listened, captivated by the waitress's words. The legend of the vanishing hitchhiker unfolded before him. The hitchhiker, a young woman named Eliza, had been on her way to meet her fiancé when tragedy struck. Her car had crashed on that very highway, claiming her life. "They say she wanders these roads, searching for her lost love," the waitress continued. John hung on her every word, his initial fear giving way to curiosity. He thanked the waitress and left the diner. As he drove back onto the highway, the fog seemed to have lifted. But the image of the vanishing hitchhiker lingered in his mind. He was determined to find out more about Eliza. The next morning, John began his search for answers. He visited the local library, poring over old newspapers and historical records. John felt a surge of excitement. The details from the article aligned with the legend. He delved deeper into his research. He visited the local historical society. The curator, an elderly gentleman, greeted him warmly. John explained his interest in Eliza's story. The curator led John to a back room filled with dusty artifacts. Among the collection were several boxes labeled with Eliza's name. Inside, he found old photographs, letters, and personal belongings. A particular photograph caught his attention. It was a portrait of Eliza in her wedding dress. John felt a pang of sadness, knowing that her happiness had been cut tragically short. He discovered a small, leather-bound diary filled with Eliza's handwritten entries. Eliza's diary entries revealed a secret that sent shivers down John's spine. The words seemed to leap off the pages, each sentence more haunting than the last. She had been having premonitions of her own death, vivid and terrifying visions that she couldn't escape. In the days leading up to her wedding, she had vivid dreams of a car crash and a foggy road. The details were so clear, it was as if she had lived through them. John read on, his eyes scanning the faded ink, each word pulling him deeper into Eliza's world. He could almost hear her voice trembling with fear and uncertainty. Eliza wrote about her fiancé William and the deep love they shared. Their bond was unbreakable, a love story that seemed destined for a happy ending. John felt a profound sense of sadness as he realized the depth of their love and the tragedy of their loss. It was as if he could feel their pain, their hopes and their dreams slipping away. Eliza's diary ended abruptly. The last entry dated the day before her wedding. The final words were filled with hope and excitement, making the sudden end even more heartbreaking. John closed the diary, his mind racing with questions. What had happened to Eliza? Why did her life end so tragically? He felt a sense of responsibility to help Eliza find closure. Her story had touched him deeply, and he knew he couldn't just walk away. He decided to visit the cemetery where Eliza was buried. The thought of standing by her grave filled him with a mix of dread and determination. He hoped that by paying his respects, he might be able to make contact with her spirit. Perhaps, in the quiet of the cemetery, he could find the answers he was seeking and bring peace to Eliza's restless soul. John wandered through the labyrinth of graves, searching for Eliza's final resting place. The fog hung thick in the air, wrapping around the tombstones like a shroud. Each step he took echoed in the stillness, a reminder of the silence that now enveloped Eliza's world. He finally found Eliza's grave, marked by a simple headstone. The inscription was barely legible, worn down by years of weather and neglect, yet it was unmistakably hers, a testament to a life cut tragically short. John stood before the grave, his heart heavy with sadness. Memories of Eliza flooded his mind, each one a painful reminder of what had been lost. He felt a deep connection to her, a bond that transcended time and space. He closed his eyes and spoke to Eliza's spirit. His voice was barely a whisper, carried away by the gentle breeze that rustled the leaves around him. He poured out his heart, sharing his grief and longing for closure. He expressed his sorrow for her tragic fate and his admiration for the love she had shared with William. He spoke of the dreams they had, the future that was stolen from them. His words were filled with a deep sense of loss and regret. As he spoke, a gentle breeze swept through the cemetery. It was as if the very air around him was responding to his emotions, a silent witness to his pain. The leaves rustled softly, adding a haunting melody to his words. He opened his eyes and gasped. Before him stood a figure that seemed to glow with an otherworldly light. It was Eliza, her presence both comforting and unsettling. Standing before him was the ghostly figure of Eliza in her wedding dress. The dress flowed around her like mist, ethereal and beautiful. Her eyes, though filled with sorrow, held a glimmer of hope. Her ethereal form radiated a soft, white light. It was a light that seemed to come from within, illuminating the darkness around her. She was a beacon of hope in the midst of despair. Eliza approached John, her spectral form gliding effortlessly. There was a grace to her movements, a serenity that belied the turmoil she had endured. She seemed to float above the ground, untouched by the physical world. She reached out a hand towards him, her touch sending a chill down his spine. It was a touch that was both real and unreal, a connection that bridged the gap between the living and the dead. Eliza's voice, when she spoke, was a soft whisper. It was a voice that carried the weight of years, filled with both sorrow and gratitude. Her words were a balm to John's aching heart. She thanked John for believing her story and acknowledging her pain. Her gratitude was palpable, a testament to the bond they shared. She spoke of the peace it brought her, knowing that someone cared. She told him that she had been trapped between worlds for far too long. Her spirit had been unable to move on, held back by unresolved emotions and unfinished business. She longed for release, for the chance to find peace at last. Eliza shared her story with John, revealing the truth behind her restless spirit. She had been on her way to her wedding when a dense fog descended upon the road. Blinded by the thick mist, she lost control of her car and crashed. She died instantly, her dreams of a happy future shattered. In death, she realized that she was tethered to the earthly realm. She appeared as a hitchhiker, a ghostly bride searching for her lost love. John listened intently, his heart aching for Eliza's plight. Eliza told John that she yearned to be reunited with William. John vowed to help Eliza find peace. Eliza's form shimmered, a soft sob escaping her spectral lips. A sense of peace washed over her, a feeling of gratitude for the kindness he had shown her. Eliza's form began to fade, her ghostly image flickering softly. She smiled at John, her eyes filled with hope and gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. John watched as Eliza's spirit disappeared into the night, leaving him in awe. He stood by her grave for a long moment, his thoughts consumed by the encounter. The next morning, John visited William's grave, feeling a sense of duty. He found it in a quiet corner of the cemetery, away from the world. John stood before the grave, feeling the weight of Eliza's heartfelt message. He conveyed her message of love and regret, her sadness at the life they had been denied together. As he spoke, the wind rustled through the willow tree, its branches swaying gently in the breeze. John left the cemetery with a heavy heart, but a sense of peace. He had been touched by the tragic story of Eliza and William. He returned to the highway where he had encountered Eliza. The fog had lifted, and the road stretched out before him. He thought of Eliza, her spirit finally at peace. The legend of the vanishing hitchhiker lived on in the town. But for John, it was a testament to the enduring power of love. John continued to drive, his heart filled with caution and compassion. He hoped that by sharing Eliza's story, he could help others understand that even in death, there is always hope for peace. He left a single white rose on the side of the road, a tribute to Eliza. John never forgot his encounter with Eliza. The memory of her ghostly presence and her tragic story stayed with him. He continued to research local legends and ghost stories. He shared Eliza's story with others, cautioning them to be careful on the road. The legend of the vanishing hitchhiker served as a reminder that hope and love can endure. It taught him that the greatest gift we can give is our time and compassion. John continued to drive down that highway, his heart filled with sadness and hope. He left a single white rose on the side of the road, a tribute to Eliza. As he drove away, he felt that she was at peace. The fog had lifted and the road ahead was clear.